Okay, looks like 9:30. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Supervisor Brandow.
Here.
Supervisor Magzig.
Here.
Supervisor Mendez.
Here.
Supervisor Pacheco.
Here.
Chairman Quintero.
Here.
All present. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023 meeting of the Fresno County Board of Supervisors. We will begin today's meeting with the invocation and flag salute. The invocation will be led by District 5. That would be Supervisor Nathan Magzig. And following the invocation, please remain standing for the flag salute. Supervisor Magzig?
Yes, here with us today to lead us in the invocation is Ed Hill, and Ed is our Chief Operating Officer for Fresno County. Ed is married and has 3 children. He enjoys woodworking, fishing, and spending time with his family. So please stand for the prayer and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Supervisor Magzig. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Please bow your heads and pray with me. Heavenly Father, we come to you asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we navigate this day. May we have meaningful discussions that will help build each other up. May we approach each other with respect and kindness. Allow us to grow closer and foster the bonds of our community and help us navigate the challenges we face. We pray for you to look for those who are affected by the recent storms and disasters. We pray for those who find themselves in the throes of war. And we pray for our men and women in uniform and their safe return. We ask these things in your name. Amen. Salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agendas are located on the table at the back of the chamber for anyone wishing to follow along. Madam Clerk, item number 1, please.
Item number 1, approve agenda.
Are there any comments from the board members at this time regarding the agenda? Okay. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
We now move to item number 2, approve consent agenda numbers 18 through 50. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I've been informed of a correction to item 47 on your consent agenda. Recommended action 2B of this item is to approve and authorize the chairman to execute an escrow agreement. However, on the signature page, page 11 of the escrow agreement attachment, Director Stephen White was erroneously listed as the signing authority instead of Chairman Quintero. To show an evident correction to this error, my office will manually strike out Director White's name and title and insert Chairman Quintero as the correct signing authority.
These matters are routine in nature and usually approved by a single vote. Are there any members of the board that would like an item removed from consent for discussion? Okay. Seeing none, are there any members of the public who would like an item removed for discussion? Okay. With that, I will entertain a motion and a second to approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Supervisor Brandow. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 3, Clerk.
We move to item number 3 under Supervisor Brandow. Adopt resolution approving amendment to Fresno County Charter Section 15 to provide for an election to sheriff and DA in a gubernatorial non-presidential election years and provide direction to county clerk register of voters to place on the March 5th, 2024 primary election ballot.
Supervisor Brandow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, to my colleagues and to the public, I want to encapsulate why I'm making this motion today to put this on the ballot for voters to vote on in Fresno County. Assembly Bill 759 became effective January 1st of this year, and it essentially moved the election of the sheriff and the district attorney to the presidential election year. In all counties across California. And we've always had those in the midterm non-presidential election years. And I personally believe there's several good reasons for that. And one of them is, these are two very valuable offices, and it allows a strong focus on those two important offices, rather than get them lost in the massive presidential election cycle, to keep them in the midterm, keep the focus in Fresno County, on these two important offices. And so that's partially the reason that I would like to, for us to consider putting this on the ballot for election. So I also want to add that I believe that the state has somewhat overstepped constitutionally towards charter counties, which Fresno County is a charter county. In a moment, I'm going to ask Dan to talk a little bit about that part of it. For me, this is another in a long line of things that Sacramento has done to remove local control, and I think they're trying to do that again by messing with us in our elections. I do have a memo from District Attorney Smitkamp, who could not be here this morning, and she made this public in a media announcement, but I'm just going to read it word for word from what she said. The Fresno County Board of Supervisors is properly challenging the passage of AB 579. I think that's the right number. This type of legislative action, where lawmakers change the rules arbitrarily, is becoming commonplace in Sacramento in these unprecedented times. The legislation was not passed until after the candidates filed the proper paperwork to run for office for a 4-year term, and the voters voted for each candidate with this understanding that they would serve a 4-year term. It was irresponsible and potentially unconstitutional, which I mentioned, to pass this legislative legislation extending the term of district attorney and sheriff without proper notice to the voters before they casted the ballots. And what the district attorney is referring there to a couple of times is, if we make the change that Sacramento is demanding, it would immediately cast these two elections, and they would get a 6-year term rather than a 4-year term, which was what was on the ballot, which is what the voters believe they were voting for. So for all of these reasons, I would like us to consider putting this on the ballot to continue holding those two important elections in the midterm cycle, rather than shift like the state wants us to the presidential cycle. And I've asked Dan, I told Dan ahead of time, I'd like for him to talk about that little constitutional piece a little bit, so that if anybody has more detailed questions about that, he'd be a better one to make this statement than myself.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Supervisor. California Constitution, Article 11, Section 4, provides charter counties with certain home rule powers. Among those are for the county to provide for an elected sheriff, an elected district attorney, an elected assessor, other officers, their election or appointment, compensation terms, and removal. This constitutional provision was brought up during the consideration of this legislation by the legislature. It just kind of hangs there in all the committee reports on it. The question was raised, but the legislature attempted to gloss over it, in my view, by allowing those that had already passed specific times when they would have their sheriff and DA elected, and tried to exclude those charter counties that have this power in their charter but haven't exercised it yet. And they tried to take, contrary to what the Constitution provides, exercise that power in an area that is clearly a home rule power under the state constitution for a charter county.
All right, Mr. Chairman, that's basically it.
Okay. Are there any comments from the board? Okay. Any comments from the public? Okay. With that, I will entertain a motion and a second to approve this item.
Then I will make the motion, and Dan, might have to make sure my motion's really clear. I'd like to make a motion to put this as discussed, as is in our agenda packet, on the ballot for election this November. Yes, to adopt this resolution.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 4.
We now move to item number 4 under the Administrative Office. Receive presentation on the County Administrative Office's recommended second round award list for counties' American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, state local fiscal recovery funds, and discuss and accept the second round award list and earmark recommended funds for each program to be funded by American Rescue Plan Act state local fiscal recovery funds, and direct staff to further vet and return to the board with proposed agreements for each of the programs in the second round award list for the board's approval.
Okay. With that, I see quite a few hopeful nonprofit faces out in the crowd. Interested to hear your presentation, Mr. Nerdlin.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Happy to be before you today to share what would be our second and probably final round when it comes to the ARPA funds that have been made available to our county. George Uke is going to share a brief presentation about that, but also some updates to the ARPA regulations and the interim rules that govern the decisions that we make. And so, George, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I'm George Uke with the County Administrative Office. Before I begin the presentation, I want to start off with a brief introduction of the funding availability. On November the 8th, 2022, your board earmarked $4,225,000 million in ARPA funds to be made available to local entities and county departments through an open application process. Staff contacted over 400 representatives and invited them to participate. Staff also made the announcement on social media and also held a Zoom webinar to help interested individuals to complete an application to submit a request to the county. At the end of the application process, county did receive 42 application submittals with an estimated funding value of about $38.8 million. This next following slides are just going to be a quick recap on the ARPA program. There are 4 general eligible categories. Applicants had the opportunity to request funding under 3 categories. So Category A, which is respond to the public health emergency or its negative economic impacts. Category B, premium pay for essential workers. And Category D, infrastructure improvements in either water, sewer, or broadband. In addition to the ARPA requirements, your board has adopted priorities and guiding principles for the ARPA program. The guiding principles are in place to guide your board's funding decisions on the use of ARPA. The applicants had an opportunity to describe how their proposal would meet the ARPA requirements as well as implement your board's guiding principles for the program. This next slide highlights the timeline of the open application process. On November the 18th, the open application period was opened. Staff held a Zoom webinar on November the 29th, 2022. That webinar was recorded and available on the county's website in case anybody missed the webinar. The application period closed on January 4th at 5 p.m. From the beginning and mid-January 2023, staff compiled all the applications that were received. By February through April, CAO staff convened on 3 occasions to review all the application submittals and prepared a second round award list. From May through July, staff finalized the pre-award assessments, which leads me to the second round award list. This slide shows the 10 recommended programs with specific funding amounts for each entity selected. The recommended amount is the $4,225,000. The entities include Poverello House, Habitat for Humanity, Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation, Internal Services Department, Westside Family Preservation Services Network, Self-Help Enterprises, Central California Food Bank, the Aubrey Sawmill, and the Valley Center for the Blind. This slide shows the 32 applications that were received that are currently unfunded. The estimated amount is about $32 million, which leads me to the proposed action plan. If your board approves today's recommended actions, staff would work with the entities that have been selected to develop written agreements that would be returned to your board for approval before the end of November of this year. Wanted to share a brief update that expands ARPA eligible categories that the Treasury announced just a few weeks ago. This new legislation, I'm going to briefly summarize it as the Infrastructure and Disaster Relief Flexibility Act. The interim final rule was released last week. It expands the eligible categories that the county may use ARPA funding for. There's 3 additional categories, which is surface transportation projects, emergency relief from natural disasters, and Title I projects, which includes community development block grant projects. The counties may use ARPA funds for these new eligible categories for costs that are incurred starting December 29th of 2022. The Treasury did keep the obligation period for the counties to obligate all the funds before December 31 of 2024. This concludes staff's presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any comments, Mr. Nerlin? Follow up?
The only comment, excuse me, the only comment I would make is in going through this process, we have a limited amount of funds and a lot of needs in our county. So the process itself, though, was robust. We're very pleased in what we're bringing to recommend to you today, but beyond that, we can answer any questions that you may have.
Any comments from the board? I've got a couple comments. George, I want to thank you for all the work that you've put in. I know it's been a long process since we first started with ARPA funding that was presented to us, but I want to thank you for answering any of the questions that the board might have had regarding any of the funding that had been requested. So really appreciate you working with us and also, more importantly, with the organizations, I'm sure that had a lot of questions, because when they would call me, I'd say, call George. So I know you've put in a lot of time, and the staff's put in a lot of time as well. And I'm sure that, you know, we can't take care of the overall community through the work, the great work the nonprofits do, but I know that the monies that we have supported and voted on, it's going to have a positive impact on serving our community. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. So with that, no other comments? Okay, any comments from the public? Okay. There's one in the back that's coming forward.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. Michael Segala here, Magnolia Crossing Senior Assisted Living. We're a nonprofit based in Clovis. We provide 24/7, 365 days a year supportive housing. We were a public-private partnership and built our unique community in a home-like environment, serving income groups of all levels, including very low-income seniors on Medi-Cal. We are a startup organization with over 40 employees. When we saw the funds subject of today that were available for supporting public health, negative economic impacts, and essential workers, we were encouraged and would have liked to leverage county resources to strengthen our organization and improve our care in the community that we consider a model for California. We've been in the trenches for 3 years serving the most vulnerable pandemic population. It has not been easy. I've been in front of this board before to tell you about our staffing costs, turnover, low morale, isolation that seniors were forced into during the pandemic, which has devastated organizations like ours. Organizations like us receive no direct CARES Act funding, like hospitals and skilled nursing, yet we were in the front lines of the pandemic. We're not a traditional assisted living where we just we're a nonprofit assisted living. We're in a different category. Not here to file appeal or anything like that. Wish you, the best in your, just trust that you trust your staff and their decisions. Would like you to reconsider, but, it is done already. When I saw things like playground equipment, vans and stuff like that getting funded, I had to speak up on behalf of the very low-income seniors that we serve, a large and growing segment of the population, in my opinion, on par with homeless and youth populations. We would like you to think about and remember seniors and your policy decisions like the one in front of you today, and in the future, where seniors, the most impacted pandemic population, can be better represented in the allocation of COVID resources. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Segala.
Mr. Chairman, could I?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Paul or George, I don't know which one of you wants to answer this, but this gentleman brought up a good, you made a great pitch. Are there going to be any more monies available in ARPA? What does that look like in the future playing out?
So right now, we have completely allocated the ARPA funds. If in the future there are entities that don't use the funds that have been allocated, we have more requests than we have funding. And I think it just illustrates the challenge of looking at the various needs in our community and trying to make decisions that spreads this fund, the most effective way possible. But it is unlikely that we'll have additional funds available because we have more requests than we have funds.
Well, yeah, we have more requests than we have funds, but you're saying that you don't think that any of the projects that we anticipated, that we've committed to in the many months that we've been doing it, you think they'll all be able to pull off their projects and get them done in time and use the money? Or
No, there could be a possibility that we're coming back to your board with entities that couldn't meet the requirements of ARPA and couldn't get it done. So there could be the opportunity to take those funds and allocate them to another source.
all right, okay, thank you.
In fact, Supervisor Brando, I'm working with one entity right now that is, that received funding that's going to give some of it back. So we'll have, it's not a lot, but it's something. And then plus it's an election year, so there may be more money coming.
Okay,
We don't know.
right.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else from the public? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion and a second to approve the item. Oh, come forward.
I don't know if it's the appropriate time. I let somebody know I was coming. I'm Mary Ann Bradfield. I am with the U.S. Small Business Administration Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience. And you may have seen the emails from me. We've declared Fresno County one of our first rural
My
disasters.
apologies for interrupting. You would be
Yes.
under item number 9 for
Oh,
public comment.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Sorry about
Circle
that.
number 9 and you'll come back.
I was a little anxious.
Ah, yeah, that's good.
Mr. Chairman, with that, as it last speaker identified, there's always more need than we have funds. I too want to compliment staff. We disbanded a committee, went through the staff. We submitted what we thought were the priorities of each of our districts and the county as a whole. I think the list is a very diverse list. It's a county-wide list, and a lot of people on this list are people that simply don't have the means to get funding any other way. I know the city of San Joaquin is one. I mentioned playground equipment. There's several groups that come before this board that say we don't do enough for the youth and for the parks. We have our forest with the sawmill for Supervisor Magsig in District 5. I think staff did a very good job of spreading the money out among the districts and the county, and there's simply just more need than there are funds. I wholeheartedly support this list. I think they did a good job, and I'll make a motion to move this item forward.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
We now move to item number 5, and the assessor recorder, grant permission for assessor recorder to absent himself from the state for 30 days, but not more than 2 months in accordance with Government Code Section 1063.
Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, board members. Good morning, County Council. Good morning, CEO. Paul Dictos, Fresno County Assessor Recorder. I just figured out that when you become a senior citizen, you have to be very careful when you travel. So I'm planning to go and visit my homeland. I haven't been back there for about 8 years. And I'm in front of you to ask permission to make sure that I don't violate the law. The law says I cannot leave the stay for more than 30 days. So I'm here to ask you permission to allow me to go for 30 days or no more than 60 days.
Do we have any comments from the board?
Wait till comment.
Okay. Seeing none, any comments from the public? Okay, no comments from the public. With that, I'll entertain.
No,
a-
no, over here.
Excuse me.
Oh, okay. Sorry about
How does it work now, Paul? So what are the rules? Kind of remind me.
I found out the hard way. I found out after reading Section 1063 that if I go overseas and for some reason there is a COVID or I get sick or there is a riot in my country and I cannot come back within 30 days, I lose my position. And only the governor can reinstate me. That's Code Section 1063.
Okay.
I don't want to run full of the law.
And so right now, the limit's 30 days, and you want to move it to 60?
Well, I probably will only go for 3 weeks.
Oh,
But
okay.
out of caution, you
Trying to
know,
do it out of caution.
because COVID is still prevalent in Europe, and there's enough troubles with the Turks that something may happen. I just want to make sure.
Okay. All right, thanks. I'm good.
I got a question. Mr. Dictos, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
If you're going to take this extended period of time, and I get it, everybody deserves a vacation and a period of time, but to me, 30 days is a bit excessive. If you're going to be gone 30 days, are you going to forfeit your pay, or you're still going to draw your check when you're going to be gone for a month?
Sir, I don't forfeit my pay. If I stay home and never show up in the office for a whole year, I don't forfeit my pay. That's the rule.
Okay. All right.
I mean, are you suggesting that I forfeit my pay? Is this what you're suggesting?
Well, I just think if you're going to be away from your duties for a month, that's a bit excessive. And I don't, personally, I think that's a bit much to ask the taxpayers to pay and not be here to perform your duties.
Well,
That's my opinion. Now,
county employees can get
different-
154 hours a year vacation. That's more than a month. Something like that. So county employees are allowed to take a lot of vacation. So I'm not allowed to any vacation, but I can take off when I have to take off as long as the work is being done. I have competent employees. I have a competent assistant who can take care of business while I'm gone. There's no doubt about that.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, so, for me, typically, when it comes to things like this, if there's something that comes up that's unforeseen, I mean, I'm willing to even call a special meeting to deal with a situation where, God forbid, some unrest happens and you're not able to make a flight out. So, ultimately, I can appreciate the request. Where I have hesitation is granting this request prior to there being anything, because this is the exception for this rule, which this board can make up to 60 days. Typically, there needs to be an extraordinary circumstance. And yes, you mentioned that COVID could be an issue that flares up in Europe. But what I'm sharing with you is I don't feel comfortable supporting this. However, if you do go on this trip and you find that something beyond your control is keeping you in Europe, whether it be COVID, war, or something unforeseen like that, I'm willing to call a special meeting to consider granting that leave out to 60 days. I've got no problem with that.
Thank you, sir. But for your information, I already have made arrangements to be airlifted from Greece to Fresno. I'll get back in time.
Then there won't be a need.
There's no, what I'm hearing is there's no issue then, correct?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Magzik, you bring up a great point. I was waiting to see. In general, I don't like these rules that are sometimes too constrictive, and I could see, I am speaking to a pastor friend of mine from down the street, and he caught COVID on a cruise ship just 2 weeks ago. So, things happen. But Paul, I'm certainly willing, if you were traveling and you had any type of a medical emergency, or there was a national emergency in that state or in our country, I would certainly support calling a special meeting. And at that time, I would support extending that time for
Thank you.
sure.
Let's hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Paul, who's your assistant that will be taking your place?
My right-hand assistant is Joanna Bisuta.
Okay. I wasn't sure who was in.
Yeah, she's the one.
Okay. All right. Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion and a second to approve this item. No. Okay. Motion fails, Paul. So, Mr. Cedarborg, where do we go from here?
No action taken on item number 5. We now move to item number 6, correct?
And if, as I think the board members have expressed to the assessor, that if a problem arises while he's traveling, the board has a willingness to call a special meeting to then grant him the permission to be absent from the state more than 30 days.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
We now move,
So what does that mean? That means that I cannot go? You're not allowing me to take vacation? For your information, my predecessor was gone for 6 months in Hawaii. Nobody knew. I just want to be honest. Was that?
This board wasn't sitting.
I know.
We're done with this deal.
What does that mean in English?
This item's done.
So this means that you're not going to vote for me. You're not going to allow me.
No, you can do whatever you want. Weren't you listening? Can't you understand English?
No. I need a translator sometimes. What's the problem?
Two of the board
Miss-
members just told you if you need action when you're where you're at to go past the days, we'll have.
I realize that, but there's a lot of assessors that go in front of the board and get this voted in. You just don't want to vote it. Yeah, so I have to call when I get sick.
This item's done.
So you don't need any clarification from the council, county council?
Well, I mean, as I understand it, the assessor's plans are for less than a 30-day vacation. He can do that without permission of this board. The statute only kicks in when there's a 30-day absence. I understand the assessor was asking for the contingency now. The board has declined to make a motion to that extent.
Thank you very much for your kindness. Bye.
we now move to item number 6, under Public Works and Planning. Consider petition for partial cancellation of agricultural land conservation contract number 2568 filed by Dirk Puschel Land Development Services Incorporated on behalf of Maria and Jesus Leon to remove a 2.01 acre portion of a 20-acre parcel from the Williamson Act and contract to allow the creation of a 2.01 acre homesite exception parcel for residential use. And if your board is able to make all 5 required findings listed under Government Code Section 51282B, take the following actions. A, adopt the negative declaration prepared for the initial study A326, and B, adopt resolution authorizing partial cancellation of agricultural land conservation contract number 2568, and C, authorize chairman to sign the certificate of tentative cancellation and approve recording the certificate of cancellation when all conditions included in the certificate of tentative cancellations have been satisfied.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Chris Mata with the Department of Public Works and Planning. This item comes to your board with a recommendation for denial from the county's Agricultural Land Conservation Committee. The committee considered this request to remove an approximately 2-acre area from the Williamson Act program through the cancellation process. The proposed 2-acre homesite exception parcel, although meeting the requirements of the zoning ordinance, does not meet the 10-acre minimum parcel size for lands under Williamson Act contract as stipulated by the state of California for this type of parcel. At its June 14th meeting, on a vote of 4-1, the committee was unable to make finding number 3 of the 5 required cancellation findings. Finding number 3 is related specifically to general plan consistency. The existing 20-acre parcel is currently planted in vineyards and contains 2 single-family residences, one of which would occupy the proposed homesite exception parcel. In closing, should your board be able to make all of the 5 required cancellation findings, staff requests that your board move to adopt the negative declaration prepared for the proposal's initial study, 8326, and adopt the resolution authorizing partial cancellation of agricultural land conservation contract number 2568, and authorize the chairman to sign a certificate of tentative cancellation and approve the recording of the certificate of cancellation when all conditions included in the certificate of cancellation have been satisfied. Staff has confirmed that a representative of the property owner is present today to speak to this item. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any comments from the board? Oh, extra.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Dirk Puschel, and I'm here this morning on behalf of Jesus Leon and his family. Mr. Leon has lived on the property for 51 years. Both of the homes exist on the property. There were building permits that were issued for both of the homes. So the net result of this is no impact to agriculture. There's not going to be one vine or tree removed as a result of this proposal. The Leons would like, they're getting up in age. Mr. Leon is 93 years old. He would be here today, but he also was overcome by COVID, but his family members are here. The purpose is to allow their son to move into one of the homes on this home site that's to be created. Then Mr. Leon would remain on the property and continue working the farm. We believe all of the findings can be made. Again, it's a legitimate gift deed to a family member, and there'll be no adverse impact to agriculture. So we ask that you support this request.
Well, Mr. Purcell, it's not in my district, it's in Supervisor Mendez, but you said the key phrase that meet my requirements on these kind of things, that you said a family member will be occupying the other home, and for that, I have no issue with that.
Yeah,
If Supervisor
that's
Mendez does not.
exactly how I see it, since the son is gonna come back and live, nothing's changed.
Nothing's
The
changed.
standard gift deed,
Thank you.
yeah.
We appreciate it. Thank you very much. It speaks to the family, too, that they want to be together, and I think that's very commendable, and we thank the board for your sensitivity.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. And that's-
Any other comments from the board?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Okay. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion and a
Motion to
second.
approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 7.
Item number 7, under Board of Supervisor Committee Reports and Comments.
Any comments, committee reports from the board? Okay, seeing none, moving on to item number 8.
Item number 8, Board Appointments.
Okay. Are there any board members who wish to make appointments? Supervisor Mendez?
For,
Education Authority.
Transportation Authority, can that one be made today? So I'm gonna rename Paul Sahota
Yes, I'm sorry.
to the at-large rural position.
Yep, term to expire 6/30/2025.
Yeah.
Supervisor Magzik?
I have no one to appoint at this time.
None for me.
Steve?
No, but that's a great appointment, Supervisor Mendez. We've been working with Paul Sahota now for years. He's curious, has strong opinions, and very thoughtful, so I'll make a
We ask questions.
so I'll make a motion to approve these
Yeah.
appointments.
Second it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item number 9, clerk.
Item number 9, public presentation. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons desiring to address the board on any matter not on this agenda.
Okay. That being said, you're limited to 3 minutes per presentation and no more than 15 minutes total per topic. Now it's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and
Welcome.
Supervisors. I'm Mary Ann Bradfield. As I said, I'm a Public Information Officer with the United States Small Business Administration, Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience. I know that's a lot, so thank you for letting me get that out. If you're not familiar with SBA, we are the smallest of the federal cabinet level agencies, and we do disaster recovery and resilience. And what that means is that in this case, we have recently made one of our very first ever rural disaster declarations that benefits the entire county of Fresno. We help with low-interest loans at affordable terms for rebuilding for homeowners, renters, businesses, private nonprofits, which is what piqued my interest when you were talking about nonprofits. and small agricultural co-ops. And for small businesses, private nonprofits, and small ag co-ops, we can help with economic injury, or even if they didn't have any physical losses from those floods in the late winter, if they had lost revenues, they can apply for something called an economic injury disaster loan. And that will help them with operational cost based on that they would have otherwise been able to pay had the disaster not happened. And I wanted to call attention to the fact that we have a virtual disaster loan outreach center that they can call to get assistance and more information at 916-735-1512. They can also go to sba.gov or onto our social media sites to get more information. And I also brought some materials that can be handed out.
Thank you.
And last but not least, I would like to introduce our Fresno District Director, who is here all the time to help your small businesses in any way they can, and I'll let her speak for just a second.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Just a reminder, although my office in Fresno does not oversee the disaster program, we are available to assist small businesses and others here in Fresno County that have been affected by the recent storms, so they can reach out to our office via email, fresno@sba.gov. We do have Spanish-speaking staff, so if you have Spanish-speaking constituents who have questions or need help, they're certainly welcome to reach out to our office, and we are available to be a resource. I know Marianne did send out information to all of you via email, and just wanted to make sure that all of you are aware and your constituents are aware also that there is help available for those affected by the storms earlier this year. Thank you.
For those watching and listening, what is your definition of a small business?
Go ahead.
You're probably, next go ahead.
Yeah, so, it's basically SBA does have a definition of small business depending on the type of business. It's either the number of employees or it's their gross revenue. But we would advise businesses to apply, and then it can be determined based on looking at their information and the type of business they are, if they're a small business or not.
It's a little flexible then.
There's a lot that goes into making that determination. So we would encourage them to apply. There's no cost to apply, and there's no obligation to take a loan if they qualify for one.
Okay, thank you.
And then two, for private property owners that maybe had damage to private roads or even their physical structures, do they have to be business owners, or can individual citizens that have seen damage maybe qualify for a low-interest loan through the SBA to rebuild that infrastructure or their homes?
We help homeowners as well as businesses. And in the case of physical rebuilding, they don't have to be a small business. They can be a business of any size. It is only the economic injury disaster loans that require that you're a small business in terms of disaster lending. And of course, we have other loan programs that Dawn and her team can help direct people to for other purposes.
And I believe the County of Fresno partnered with you in issuing a press release maybe a week ago or so, just letting the residents of Fresno County know what can be accessible. And so individuals can just go to fresnocountyca.gov to our website, maybe to find some of that information. And I know on my Facebook page, I issued some of that information as well.
And thank you for reminding me of that, sir, because I actually intended to mention that. Yes, your staff here and Supervisor Magzig have been amazing to work with, because I know he's got quite a few constituents who've been affected. And if there's any questions, I'll leave my business cards. Any questions now, if any of either of us?
Well, I've got a few comments. Ms. Golick, nice to finally meet you, other than our phone conversations, but you've been helpful in giving me some direction. I'm still trying to find some cleanup money for the one business, and my staff person is going to talk to Ms. Barfield when you leave, but thank you very much. Really appreciate the information and being helpful. Really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay. Thank you. I think we're good. Oh, one more lady wants to speak. Okay. No, this. You're separate.
Good morning. I'm just a Fresnoite taxpayer who has a concern. My name's Patricia Hebert. I came into the June meeting and brought this to your attention. I'm sure you've heard about it. It's Assembly Bill 969. I sent you all an email yesterday with the actual amended bill as it stands right now. It already passed through the Assembly, and it's going to through the Senate right now in California. The problem I have with it is that the Secretary of State wants to take over every election in California using machines. They do not want Shasta County or any other county to go to hand paper counting. And I have a problem with that. I am not represented at the federal level. I am not represented at the state level. You are my last hope. As a conservative American citizen, born in California, lived here my whole life, I have no one left but you. And I'm very concerned because this bill states, I'll just read briefly, notwithstanding subdivision, blah, blah, an elections official shall not conduct a manual vote count in an election, and the Secretary of State shall not approve a plan to conduct a manual vote count for that election if either of these are true, and there are just two. The election is held on an established election date as provided by Section 1000, and there are more than 1,000 registered voters who are eligible to participate in that election. And number two, the election is held on a date other than the established election date, and there are more than 5,000 registered voters who are eligible. So Fresno County is way over that. They're saying if you have 1,000 people or 5,000, you can do a manual count. But if you have more than that, you can't. And so I am just, you know, this is affecting our whole country, not just Fresno, not just California. And I don't want the government to intrude on my right to voice my beliefs in our system, which we have had, you know, since we started California. We have a constitution. We do have laws. We have regulations that are voted on. None of this is voted on. So I just really appeal to you that you might do something before it's too late. I don't know what you can do, but I'd love to hear if there's something that you can do to save Fresno County from this. And that's my question to you.
Well, a quick question I have for you, Patricia. You say do you live in the city of Fresno?
Yes.
And roughly what part of Fresno? Are you in Southeast?
I'm in 3.
Okay, in District 3.
McLean.
I did receive your email, and I'm happy to correspond with you a little bit further, not only about this particular bill that's in the legislature. And typically, I don't comment when the public comments, but I wanted to just speak up a little bit regarding your conversation here, and I appreciate you being here today. I'm happy to reach out, talk with you further, and I'm one who believes in local control. This board believes in local control. So anything that the state does to try to concentrate power in Sacramento, generally I'm against those types of things. So please reach out to my office again, give me a call, and we can dialogue a little bit over the phone, and I'll see how my office can assist you with the permission of Sal, because I never want to overstep a supervisor who does actually represent you. So with Sal's permission, I'm happy to work with you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I just hope we can keep Fresno free. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hebert. Okay. Any other comments for public presentation? Seeing none, is there any comments from the public wishing to address the board on closed session items number 10 through 17? Okay. Seeing none, County Council, Mr. Cedarborg, will we have anything to report out, or can we adjourn following closed session?
Mr. Chairman, we do not anticipate any announcements following closed session, so if the board chooses, it would be appropriate to adjourn following closed session.
Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion and a second to adjourn following closed session.
So moved.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank